Hello, my name is Charlie Hogan, and this is my week 5 submission for MFT 6102. Let's just dive right in here. Today we're taking a look at an individual by the name of Samuel King, aka Sam. Um, he is currently working as a custodian full time. He's never been married, and the reason that Samuel sought counsel was due to a list of symptoms that he has been experiencing over the past several years. These symptoms include low energy and mood, insomnia, a hard time concentrating, and literally being unable to enjoy um, life or experience a bout of joy, happiness, things of that nature. To combat these symptoms, he has been treated with a number of medications, including citalopram and fluoxetine. He has even tried supportive psychotherapy in the past, but unfortunately, these treatments have all fell a little flat, and he's seen minor to no improvement, um, taking them. Now, he denies any type of suicidal thoughts or attempts to take his own life, but he did mention an instance that happened several months ago where he had, I guess he was near the subway to take the subway somewhere, and he looked down at the tracks and he considered jumping, onto them in an attempt to take his life. He hasn't mentioned feeling like that or having any of those thoughts anytime recently, but it's still important to mention that he had that thought at one point in time. Now, Sam denies any and all illicit drug use, but he does state that from time to time he drinks alcohol. My initial observation of Sam concluded that he was cognitively intact, uh, coherent, and goal oriented. He was being cooperative the entire time, um, because he wants to experience changes. And this is evident from him literally describing his ailments or the symptoms he's suffering from. Is a little crazy. He's aware um, that some of his feelings, or he feels that some of his feelings aren't normal, and he is hoping, to change that. Now, his initial appearance, he seemed like a fairly relaxed individual, dressed casually, but it's a strong scent of sodium hypochlorite emanating from him. Another word for that, household bleach. The smell of bleach was literally, you know, wafting off of him. Um, when asked, about any potential, anxiety he had currently been suffering from, um, he had stated that he was worried about contracting serious diseases like HIV. That when he leaves the house, he literally tries his best to not touch anything. He would rather not touch anything outside of his home. Even coming close to something that he considers potentially hazardous or dangerous makes him feel very uncomfortable. And it would literally prompt him to wash his hands aggressively and often with abrasive chemicals like bleach. Now, on a normal day, he could wash his hands up to 30 times. Um, his hand washing regimen literally takes hours from his daily routine. Um, he had mentioned that physical contact in general is extremely difficult for him, and because of that, he chooses to refrain from any type of romantic relations or even social engagements. Even tasks that may seem simple to most, like going to the grocery store or taking public transportation, are almost too much for Sam to bear from time to time. He then told me that he had been experiencing some fears related to these intrusive images that pop into his mind from time to time of him hitting someone. He also worries about during social interaction, when speaking to someone or a group or whichever, he's worried that the words he uses or something that he says may be either taken the wrong way or come off wrong, or it may seem rude, and that the person would literally be offended talking to him. Now, this is especially true when it comes to his neighbors. These images and thoughts can, appear into his conscious mind at any given time, and to reduce his anxiety related to this event, he literally replays the conversations that he had with the person or individuals over and over in his head. I'm not sure if that's an attempt to clarify maybe exactly what happened, exactly what he said, and try to, either rationalize or, you know, just see if what he said came off rude or not. But he does it, and he does it over and over again until he can get back home to his journal where he record the conversation um, down. And then, depending on the conclusion that he came to with that, he will go and apologize to said person later if he felt that he did in some way offend them. Now, Sam even refuses to fill his bathtub up with an adequate amount of water out of the irrational fear that, it will flood, and that flood will affect his neighbor's house in some form or fashion. Now, after reviewing the DSM-5, I came to the conclusion that Sam is suffering from a severe case of obsessive compulsive disorder, aka OCD. OCD is defined as a mental disorder where the sufferers are berated with a constant barrage of unwanted thoughts, feelings, ideas, and obsessions, constantly. The individual also exhibits some strange behaviors that seemingly force them to do something over and over. Often, the individual actually exhibits these behaviors to stop the thoughts and feelings and constant images from this phenomenon from occurring. Now, these phenomena can be conscious in nature, purposely done, or subconscious in nature, in which, would basically mean that the individual isn't purposely trying to avoid these, bad thoughts by immersing themselves in some habitually repeated behavior. In Sam's case, the obsessions that he suffers from are those of coming into contact with, surface contaminated with HIV, and the fear of constantly offending, those around him. And the fear of potentially wanting to hit someone or fear that he will hit someone. The compulsions that Sam suffers from is the need to wash his hands, with bleach 30 times a day, and needing to wear gloves at almost all times. Now, initially, Sam was diagnosed with some sort of depression. Now, depression is, by and large, a mood disorder that often causes an, an individual to experience frequent and reoccurring bouts of sadness and non-interest. Um, Depression can lead to issues regarding sleep as well, whether that is causing an individual to constantly seek, his or her bed to try to get as much rest as possible, or the opposite, where the sufferer, is basically an insomniac and cannot go to sleep, can occur as well. Now, insomnia, Sam said that he, suffers from insomnia. So that right there makes a lot of sense. Insomnia also causes individuals to have anxiety, low energy, and low mood. These are all things that Sam is suffering from. So it makes sense that Sam was initially diagnosed with depression. However, when you combine those symptoms with both his obsessions, fear of offending others, for instance, and compulsions, excessive hand washing, it paints an entirely different picture. Uh, Anxiety disorder was another potential possibility um, that I had considered. Um, Once again, some of the symptoms of anxiety disorder are insomnia. Um, he does worry excessively, which is goes hand in hand with anxiety disorder. Worry excessively when it comes to thoughts about making others upset or coming into contact with germs. He definitely also has some anxiety that he suffers from, but it's not like he's trembling in his seat, spazzing, or sweating profusely in any form or fashion. Nor does, if he, anxiety disorder, nor does uh, it contain the symptoms of the compulsions, which, like I said several times already, his almost irresistible urge to wash his hands, um, that is absent, from the symptoms that go along with anxiety disorder. So I was able to rule that out too. For these reasons, I concluded that even though there is some overlap between depressive disorder, um, anxiety disorder, and OCD, it was OCD that basically checked most of the boxes that Sam is currently dealing with. Now, to combat OCD, we have several different treatment options to consider. Family based therapy, treatment, and or sitting down with his immediate family, um, and discussing Sam's situation, like how it happened, how and why it continued to develop over time. Things of that nature could be, you know, definitely beneficial, literally relieving Sam of some of that stress and bringing him closer to his family, allowing them to understand a bit more about what he's going through and things of that nature. Now, there are many family based therapy types that Sam could choose from, like narrative or structural. But this method will only, work if his family members are willing to participate. Granted, he didn't really mention his family, so we don't really know anything about them. But if he has family and they're willing to participate, it could help him gain some much needed insight, and help him cope and improve his situation immensely, by literally having more social interaction, and gaining the confidence after each and every conversation, potentially helping him combat his worrisome habit of dwelling on the words and reliving the conversations and every word that he uttered, to each individual that he comes in contact with. Now, this is slightly different than psychological based therapy, um, in which he alone seeks consultation, so not with a group or the family, but with himself. Um, he was, he has rather, already received supportive psychotherapy in an attempt to help him, deal with his emotional distress. Um, but unfortunately, it had little to no effect. That is not to say that other psychological um, based treatments wouldn't be more effective, but unfortunately, after the lack of success there, there's a strong possibility that Sam may be against, more time, more money, and more effort, spent on trying to get that treatment method to work. Now, psychopharmacological treatment of OCD, um, psychopharmacological, aka medicine, often includes the use of SSRIs, which basically stands for serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors, or SNRIs, which stands for serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. And the reason, these drugs are used is because it is believed that OCD is caused by issues with the serotonin transmitters, the serotonin neurotransmitters, and located within the brain. And these drugs are used to manipulate the serotonin levels and offer some relief from OCD symptoms. Now, OCD itself is in no way curable, but it can be made more manageable uh, with medication and therapy and things of that nature. The cons to taking SSRI medication like Prozac and Zoloft, are some individuals suffer from dizziness or vomiting, dry mouth, lack of sexual desire, or in some men they can suffer from erectile dysfunction or ED, just to name a few of the potential side effects. However, many individuals feel that those side effects are a small price to pay in order to help ease the burden, the thoughts, the compulsions of OCD. In his case, at first glance, it doesn't necessarily seem like that medication would be particularly beneficial because he is already taking or has taken the fluoxetine and the citalopram, um, which are both also SSRIs, but it is possible that the dose he was receiving was just too low. And by upping his medication, we may, see some more fruitful results. Now, last but not least would be biomedical treatment. And biomedical treatment uh, is, you know, utilizing electroshock therapy or electroconvulsive therapy. Both of these forms of therapy are usually used as a last resort in individuals suffering from any sort of mental illness. And in OCD, um, biomedical treatment isn't something that is normally utilized. Um, the theory behind biomedical treatment or electroshock therapy and electroconvulsive therapy in this case, what the hope is, or the theory is, that by shocking the brain, you can reduce the amount of like neural connections, literally forcing the brain to adjust and make more. In Sam's case, I would not recommend biomedical treatment in any form or fashion. Biomedical therapy does have some pros in relation to mental disorders in general, not necessarily OCD, though. Like no medicine, related side effects, and typically results can be visible after 1 or 2 sessions, although it usually takes 10 or 12 sessions to achieve the wanted results. And the cons of ECT would be the pain that is derived from the actual shocks themselves, potential memory loss, and other cognitive deficits. Now, for Sam, I believe a combination of therapy, whether it's family or individual, with an increased dose of his SSRI medication, would be a great start um, to getting Sam feeling much better. The best part is, like I mentioned earlier, Sam wants to change, and with his goal-oriented behavior, I have no doubt that we can get him to the point where his OCD is no longer controlling, his life or different aspects of his life, but only presents itself as a small to minor hindrance, on his everyday life. But at any rate, thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. Once again, my name is Charlie Hogan, and this was my submission for MFT 6102 Week 5. Thank you, and have a great day.